And we're live. Friends from around the world, welcome to the Great Debate. Not a debate where both sides work to defeat one another, rather a debate where both sides come together to find common ground. That's what makes this debate great, and it's great to have you here with us. Today, Armenia Azerbaijan. This will be our second debate on this topic. After our first one, we got tremendous response from both Armenians and Azerbaijanis. They seemed to really enjoy it, and they asked for more. And as you know, when the community asks for something, we make it happen. Everyone here with us today, it's great to have you. A reminder before we get started to keep the chat respectful. People who are spamming the chat or acting rude are going to be banned. After this debate, we're going to move it over to Discord for an after party. If you're not familiar with Discord, well, come and find out, but the conversation will continue and community members will have an opportunity to interact with our guests. I'm going to drop a link in the chat in a moment. If you're new to this page, like and subscribe. And if you really like what we do, we have a Patreon, a PayPal, and we also accept Bitcoin and Ethereum. All support is greatly appreciative, and it helps us on our mission to aid in the reconciliation process between people in conflict. That's what we're all about. It's great to have you all here with us. Without further ado, a great pleasure to bring on my two guests. To my top left, Emin Milli, a journalist and the founder and former director of Meydan TV, the largest independent online media in Azerbaijan. And to my top right, Vicken Cheterain is a lecturer in history and international relations at the University of Geneva and at Webster University Geneva. Emin, Vicken, it's great to have you both here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
If you want to find out more about our guests, you could find their full bio in the description, as well as their Twitters if you want to get in touch with them or follow them. The focus of today's topic is going to be solutions for the future. Most debates seem to get caught up in history, pointing fingers, who started it, whose fault it is. While we do see importance of having a historical discussion at times, more than anything, we need to talk about the future and how we can move forward. So that will be the theme of today's debate. So let's get started. Emin, we'll start with you. Please share with us what your vision for the future of relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia is.
Thank you very much, Adar, and I welcome Vicken also. And I'm very glad that we can have this unusual discussion. To be honest, when you approached me and said, let's have another debate, and there were so many, and what I was missing in all those debates was actually very little talk about the future, very little talk about solutions. It is usually there are maybe about 100 problems between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and in every debate we all just go either to history or accusing each other or trying to solve 100 problems at the same time. And I think this will bring us nowhere. It has not brought us anywhere. So I'm very thankful that you all agreed to have a little bit different debate, a little bit different discussion, I hope even maybe. So what is this, how can we move forward, as Armenia and Azerbaijan? In my view, and I will tell you my own experience, when I was 18 years old, I think when you grow up in Armenia or in Azerbaijan, it's very difficult not to be nationalist. It's both Armenia and Azerbaijan, are basically young states, meaning that, after collapse of Soviet Union, they gained their independence. And so it was very difficult to avoid. And because of this conflict and war, there was this always animosity, accusations. And when you grow up in school, when you just always under this kind of attack of information, how bad the other side is, you almost have no chances to think differently about it. So I'm telling this just to acknowledge, where I am coming from myself and where many people in Azerbaijan and Armenia are coming from. There are historic grievances, there are injustices, and at some point you realize that we can keep accusing each other for another 100 years or 1,000 years, but this will not bring us anywhere. We need to imagine the future. We need to dream about it if necessary. We need to start discussing the solutions, future-oriented solutions. I'm sure there will be solutions or ideas that we won't agree with, or not all Armenians or all Azerbaijanis will agree with. But I think we need to start somewhere. And I think to start somewhere, I don't think that Armenian and Azerbaijan societies at large are ready for such dialogue, but I am absolutely sure that we can find some adequate people on Armenian and Azerbaijani side to start structured dialogue on some very specific topics. In my view, it would be maybe very useful. And coming back to my initial idea, I don't think that it's a good idea to start discussing everything, because again, we will lose energy. We won't come to agreement. There will be too many disagreements, and it will be like, I think we're like stuck in the past. We are trapped, and in order to get out of this, in my view, we need to very carefully to choose some areas with very specific people, scholars, intellectuals, policy professionals, people who can talk to each other, and we need to use kind of status neutral approach. We need to use certain tools, talk about things that can be beneficial both to Armenia and Azerbaijan, where both sides can see benefits. And I think that there are some themes like this. I think there are not many, but few people who can start this process. I think this maybe should happen in a way also behind closed doors, but when it will be more or less ready to go public, we can also take it, to public. We can involve even governments and international players and actors too. But at the very beginning, it's very fragile, it's a very sensitive issue. So we need to start, in my view, quite small. I think that it would be very important, in my view, to start from the issues of economic connectivity. Because, for 30 years, there have been, you can say, almost no contact between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I know very well a lot of peace initiatives. I've been part of some of them. And I remember it's several people who, come together, hug each other, drink together, but, they don't represent the majority of Armenian and Azerbaijan societies. And I think we should avoid that. We should really involve people who may represent, the majority opinions, or but they also are adequate. So they can put their emotions aside, and they can very practically talk about the issues that actually can bring us together, things that will be in the interest of majority of Armenian people and majority of Azerbaijani people, and states too. So let me get a bit more specific about it. I talked about economic connectivity, and I'm not saying that this should be exclusive topic. There may be other topics too, and we have again to think about it. What are those other topics that will not ignite another wave of hatred and mutual accusations, but actually could move us forward, even with small steps. And but let me start with economic connectivity. I think when I talk about an economic connectivity, I'm thinking about, first of all, opening borders, opening communication. I know it's partly happening, but right now, if I see it correctly, there will be some transport communications opened, but I have not seen anyone talking about, freedom for Armenians and Azerbaijanis, travel to Armenia and Azerbaijan mutually. I think we have to start talking about this as a part of opening borders. I think that we need to think about future trade and custom regimes, because we need to stimulate local trade between border regions. I dream that one day when I believe there should be no passport control between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I think all Armenians should be able to come to Azerbaijan and vice versa. For this to happen, of course, we need to start doing, as I said, to promote trade, economic cooperation, business partnerships. And I'm thinking about, for example, free economic zones. I think that special economic spaces in the field of comparative advantage, such as construction materials or agriculture, if we create special conditions and very favorable tax regime for goods and services which will be produced on borders of where two communities live, we could basically promote trade on a very small local level, because I think it's important. We shouldn't end up just big corporations or big companies, states just cooperating with each other. I think it's very important that people living on the border in these areas, they should start seeing firsthand the positive side of talking to the other side, of building businesses together, trading together. So I think that this could be something that would help this process. Infrastructure, of course, we need to create infrastructure in all of Karabakh and all of this border area between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And I think that this will demand a lot of, I think, maybe tens of billions of dollars. And the question is where we will get this money. I think it could be a good idea to create the Karabakh Development Fund, because if we want private sector invest in these areas and big projects, even medium projects or other projects, we need to find a way to mitigate some of the risks. And I think this would be a good idea to think about. I'm throwing here ideas, and I'm not saying that all of these ideas will work. So I think that once we create this structured dialogue, we will have to have rounds of dialogues and discussions about how realistic are some of these ideas. Because these ideas can only be implemented if we all or the participants and could realistically assess if this idea would be these ideas would be supported both in Azerbaijan and in Armenia, and also by governments, but also by by ordinary people. I think it's very necessary, and then based on that dialogue, on these rounds of dialogues, we could learn lessons from that. We could develop those in policy recommendations to Armenian government, Azerbaijani government, but also to international financial institutions, to EU, to development agencies of different countries like USAID, SIDA, and others. I think that it would be very important to create a EU Eastern Partnership Investment Fund. I know that European Union and Western countries generally feel themselves sidelined, and there is this feeling that if Russia and Turkey kind of went into solving this conflict in the way they wanted, then they should pick up the bill. And I think I understand this feeling, but I think that if ambition of European Union and of United States is really peace and security in South Caucasus, then I think that this pride or this feeling should be overcome. And I think that there are a lot of tools, a lot of possibilities how both US and European Union can engage Armenia and Azerbaijan and maybe, regional powers and use the tools that, Turkey, Russia do not have. And here, for example, this investment fund could be one of ideas. I'm also thinking about peace fund, about basically, when I say, let me go back to investment fund. When I say investment fund, I mean promoting business cooperation and finance ventures across conflict divides. So I'm thinking about basically if Armenians are creating businesses and they can get money from these funds, Armenian businesses, but they need as a condition to have at least one Azerbaijani business partner, and vice versa as well. So that kind of basically push, that kind of idea maybe also could be considered and discussed within this structured dialogue, and we could see what kind of examples are there and what would work or would not work between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I'm also thinking about peace fund. I think that people-to-people contacts would be very important, and I think that could be also developed. I'm thinking also that there was recently a very good initiative that U.S. Congress committed to a program that USAID will implement by its two programs. The U.S. Congress committed $250 million to support basically, peace-building initiatives and economic cooperation, business partnership between Israelis and Palestine and people from Palestine. And I think that this is exactly what I would like also to see. For example, imagine we take power of Armenian lobby, and we take also, the allies of Azerbaijani government, and we direct it not at fighting each other, but basically attracting such investments in Karabakh, Azerbaijan, Armenia, to all this entire basically place. And I think that this is what we have to discuss. We often have been trapped in this, what we're going to win if we fight each other. But there was unfortunately very little discussion what we can win, if we actually start, putting our forces together. I will stop here, but I will be glad to continue going maybe deeper in this and other ideas after Vicken's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Emin. So, where I'm getting some echo. Okay. So, Vicken, the same question to you. What is your vision for the future of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan? And also feel free to respond to anything Emin said or build off that. The floor is yours, friend.
Adar, thank you for inviting me. And Emin, I'm glad we are having this discussion and to meet you virtually, but still to meet you. Before I answer your question, first I want to make a comment. I know that your intention is not to have a cockfight between Emin, the Azerbaijani, and Vicken, the Armenian, but the format suggests something of that, right? Especially the graphic representation of the announcement with our kind of portraits, with the flags in the back. You see, there's no flag in the back here. So I just wanted to say that I have no mandate to represent any Armenian kind of community. So I'm just representing my own ideas, and I imagine Emin is doing the same. So judge our event based on this ideas of Emin and Vicken, and not as two people representing two bigger communities. Now, when we talk about the future of Armenia and Azerbaijan, we are talking about the Karabakh conflict. Karabakh conflict is very easy to solve, and I will explain you how. But before doing that, I have a second statement, which is Karabakh conflict is impossible to solve. Basically, it depends on what level you pose the question. If you say, what's the problem between Armenians and Azeris? Let's think about it. And you place it on a very pragmatic level. And you create a committee saying, let's make a list. What these people have as a problem. So probably you will get security problem, right? Karabakh Armenians, they have security problem. Armenian and Azerbaijani villagers on the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, where for years they were shooting at each other, they have a security problem. There are landmines, security problem. There's the question of IDPs and the refugees. This is a very concrete problem. There's the problem of sense of injustice. This is a very concrete problem. So those problems comes under my first heading. It's very easy to solve if you have a pragmatic approach saying what are the problems and how can we solve it. Now the problem is that for the last 26 years, that is between the first war and the second war, the Karabakh question was never discussed. Armenian-Azerbaijani relations were never discussed as a practical problem where people say, okay, we have questions, we have issues, let's discuss how to find solutions. Because the Karabakh problem was made an identity issue. Azerbaijani identity was dependent from the Karabakh issue. Armenian identity was dependent from the Karabakh issue. For example, when the war exploded, many people, I live in Geneva in Switzerland, so many Swiss friends told me, is it true that Shushi /Shusha in Azerbaijani is the Jerusalem of the Armenians? And I was shocked, how come Shusha is Jerusalem? There's no religious symbols in that town. There's nothing to compare to Jerusalem. So this idea of taking places and turning them into symbols, turning them into an identity issue, makes it impossible to solve. How can you compromise on your identity? You cannot. So what we have to do is to find a solution for the future is to abandon making Karabakh, making Armenian-Azerbaijani relations an issue of identity, of national egoism, and we should go down on the level of pragmatism and calculate what are the problems and how can we solve them. And I assure you, the solution for those very huge problems, security, IDPs, refugees, justice, those are huge problems. I'm not underestimating them. But the cost to solve those problems, compared to the cost of the Cold War between 1994 and 2020, and the several hot wars, including the 44 days of war in 2020, plus the billions of dollars spent on armament, on machines of killing, the cost of solving the problems would have been a small fragment of the cost spent for warfare. Now, I was listening to Emin, and I think he was placing himself, or his suggestions would be on the level of what the state could do. Opening borders is not something I can do, and I don't think that it's something Emin can do. That's the business of states. Economic connectivity, also it's the role of businessmen. I'm not in business. What we should do, people like Emin and Vicken and people of our sort, intellectuals, what we should do is first of all assume our responsibility, because we share a responsibility in what happened in the first Karabakh War, in the second Karabakh War, and in the long 26 years when this problem was not solved. Because intellectuals, the intelligentsia, historians, political scientists, instead of being part of the solution, have been in their vast majority part of the problem, because they reproduced ideas of the second sort instead of the first sort I elaborated earlier. They produced ideology of antagonism. They produced nationalist ideology. And first of all, we should be critical of our past, because we share the responsibility in bringing this second war happen. And then we should think what we can do so that we avoid, reproducing this antagonism in the future, and bringing the debate on very pragmatic level, not on a level of this identity making and these romantic ideas of the nation, which basically comes from 18th and 19th century. It's not very contemporary of our times. And we should develop ways and develop spaces where we critically engage not only our own work, not only what we produce, but also what the state is doing. So intellectuals should detach themselves from being surrogates of state and becoming instruments of state propaganda. And instead of that, intellectuals should be agents of producing ideas, of producing alternatives, of developing different ways of thinking about these problems, and eventually imagining solutions.
Thank you, Vicken. Emin, feel free to respond as you wish. This part, these were opening statements. From here on out, we will have just a free-flowing conversation. I may chime in and ask questions and bring some direction, but the floor is really yours to share now and continue this discussion.
Yeah, I want just to add that I do not disagree that we should tackle the issues of injustices, on both sides, because obviously, if we want to move forward, we will have to find a way. How do we address these, grievances, injustices that exist on both sides? We need to, we really need to sit, not to do it publicly, but to sit in my view, in a closed room. I mean, several adequate people, and honestly try to find a way how it can be done in the right way. So I'm not arguing with that. But I think that the issues of economic connectivity, it's true that it is ultimately in the power of states to do this, but I think we should not allow states just monopolize this. I think that when I was talking about the structured dialogue, I was thinking about scholars, policy professionals, so about people who have intellectual power to advise both states and to engage with international players. Because, we could end up developing ideas that states would hesitate to do or not. But let's say some international players will say, okay, we could, let's say, invest, 100 million, 50 million, or I don't know how much into this idea if both Armenian and Azerbaijan governments would support this. So by this, we are actually using the intellectual power and international players also to put some pressure or to produce ideas and then to create environment where you could convince governments to do it. Whether if left on their own, maybe they wouldn't do it or they would hesitate. But if you create a very good, first intellectually and then, policy-wise, and then maybe PR-wise, and then maybe involving, again, international actors into pushing this a little bit, then, you could influence, policy making. And I think we should not withdraw ourselves completely from areas where states make decisions, because at the end of the day, people who are in charge of the states, they're also people, and they also they also can benefit from the ideas that scholars and policy professionals and business people can produce. And I'm saying business people, I think it's very important to include business people in this, because for example, when I'm thinking about, let me throw another idea. I'm thinking that we need to find a way to support innovative tech projects where we would have Armenian and Azerbaijani coders together, or Armenian and Azerbaijani tech entrepreneurs together. So to support this, we could have, if for example, if you have EU Commission saying, okay, we're gonna give, I don't know, we will support, for example, 10 projects, 10 startups, 100,000 euros each, but it should be joint Armenian, Azerbaijani enterprises, startups. What you create by this is you involve very powerful stakeholders. For last 30 years, we have to learn also the bad lessons we had. You know what? One of the problems we had for last 30 years, we had people being involved in peace building who had very little or no influence in their own societies, And I think that if we want to avoid that, if we want to really to move beyond that, we need to involve powerful stakeholders. We need to try as scholars, as individuals, as people to influence our governments and other governments and international players. We need to influence business people, engage them, make alliances with them. And I think this is very important part of this path, forward, because without this, and then what I'm talking about is building constituency, for peace. Because I don't believe that just some people meeting and talking about peace will come. It is very important. I'm not denying this fact, but what I'm saying is we need to have a strategy and we need to do alliance building, both in Armenia, in Azerbaijan, and global Azerbaijan, global Armenia, including, our allies, our friends. We need to think what to do with, politicians in US, in Europe, in Russia, in Turkey, who just take one side. I think this is very, very serious problem, because when Vicken told about nationalism in both communities, it's very interesting that we have this also, the longer arm of this, which goes to American politics, goes to European politics, in different countries, the same in Russia, in Turkey. So I think we also need to have a strategy about that. I think that politicians who under no matter what package, they basically support these divisions, or do bash one or the other side, they do not help peace and security, So again, this is yet another example how we need to engage with very powerful forces in order to influence them. And sometimes we need to, I'm not saying exposing them, I'm not saying let's attack them, but I think we need to start to plan and then openly, find the ways how we communicate to these people and even to those, to American public, to European public, how we see how they could support us, how they could support this process. So my point is, again, engaging governments, engaging business communities, engaging creative Armenians and Azerbaijanis, that is, in my view, the key to finding solution. And unless we engage them, unless we make alliances with these very powerful creative groups, if we end up just, several activists or several journalists, talking about peace, sharing ideas, this will not work.
I understand what you are saying. I know that having a very marginal group of people away from the region, sitting in a hotel somewhere and talking peace is not the solution. Yet I want to be more realistic and say that now we are in a different period. We are out of the 26 years of grosso modo status quo that we had. There's a new reality in front of us. But there's also a new global reality. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and I don't see that foreign banks and states are rushing to come and save Armenians and Azeris from their infighting, and they will bring bags of money to rebuild Karabakh. I don't see that happening. So we have to tell Armenians and Azerbaijanis that, listen, guys, you are alone. You want to find a solution to your conflict? talk to each other. There's no other way. Let's not build illusions that Europeans, Americans, Russians, Turks, Iranians, or Israelis will save Armenians and Azeris. That will not happen. The solution is to talk to each other. The only problem is that now talking to each other has become more complicated. Talking to each other was possible for 26 years, and Yerevan and Baku did everything to hinder that. I know it because for something like 10 years I was working on two major programs of having dialogue and having long-term research and exchange projects between Armenian and Azerbaijani journalists, social scientists, and so on. And for a while in the beginning it was possible, and then the states didn't want it, and they closed the tap. So when states don't want it, our margin of maneuver becomes very reduced. Then you are pushed to the margin and you are pushed outside the region. I mean, you know yourself, right? I mean, you are not living in Baku anymore. Because there's a pressure, and these two questions are linked. The pressure on pluralism, democracy, dissident ideas within one society, and on the ethno-territorial conflict, they are linked with each other. And the authorities in Baku and Yerevan, for the last 20 years, they preferred not to have dialogue, not to have alternative ways of thinking about the conflict, rather than having pluralism and having a debate about these issues. Now we are in a different situation, as I said. This incredible historical present of 26 years of largely stable situation is gone. And now Armenia is much more dependent on Russia. Now Karabakh Armenians are totally dependent on Russia. And now Azerbaijan has a very complex situation where it cannot by itself go and talk to Yerevan. There are the Russians who are there, and there are the Turks who are there. So the framework of how the future debate will take place, it's much more complex. And this is the price both states and both communities are paying. Apart from the thousands of young people killed and thousands of young people wounded, both countries have less sovereignty today and have less to say on their mutual relation and mutual future than before 27 September 2020. And we have to take this into account. And just to finish on a rather positive tone, the only positive thing is that now we have a new opportunity where both Armenian and Azerbaijani publics and maybe government circles, maybe, I say maybe because I don't see the signs yet there, but within the public, I find that people are ready to look for different voices, different ways of moving forward. And there is our main treasure today. There's the political capital. And again, I cannot decide on borders, I cannot decide on huge investments, but what I can do is to invest my time, energy, and my intellectual possibilities for looking at not only alternative ways for the future, but also having a radical, critical reading of the past. Where did we fail as single community, as two communities, but also as intellectuals? So not just to criticize ourselves, but to see where were our mistakes, what were the hypotheses which led us to mistakes, and how can we correct it in the future so that we don't repeat the same mistakes again and again in the future.
Thank you, Vicken. Emin, real quick, okay. I just want to give a little bit perspective. I'm by no means an expert on Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. My area of expertise is more the Israel-Palestine conflict, but I see many parallels, and this conversation does remind me of similar conversations we have, that when it comes to peace building, there's different approaches that we can take and different approaches that we should take. One is in the form of reconciliation. It's having conversations. It's acknowledging a wrongdoing, working on building strong interpersonal ties with one another. And that's really, Vicken, what you're talking about. And then there's more policy. How can we have businesses together? How can we have more freedom of movement? How can we travel to each other's land? How can we have security? So I see great value in both these conversations because ultimately they're both going to be needed. And what we need is activists and intellectuals and influencers to speak both these messages. We need policy positions to be part of the collective consciousness, but we also need the reconciliation process to be fully invested in on an emotional level. So I see great value in what you are both speaking about here. And with that, Emin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and I want just to make clear my position that I'm not against, Armenians, Azerbaijanis talking to each other directly. I'm absolutely for this. I think this is very important, and it should happen, and it should happen more and more. And as I said, I'm not a believer that masses need now to communicate with masses. I think that the avant-garde part of Armenian, community and Azerbaijan community need to kind of find each other, select each other, and start this process very slowly in a form of structured dialogue, and first discuss between themselves, like what can Azerbaijanis do to win, empathy of Armenians, and vice versa, because there will be certain things that probably we cannot do, at least not now, and vice versa. And then we may, find out during these dialogues that we could do something which would, be very well perceived in Armenia, but we had even no idea about it, and it would be acceptable for us. And the same, with Armenians. So I think that just to make myself clear, I'm absolutely for this direct dialogue. I see value in it. That's why I said, about this people-to-people, communication through the Peace Fund, maybe, and so on, and any other initiatives. Yes, but I think that that's absolutely. I'm not against it. So I'm for it. But at the same time, as I said, I think we do need engage powerful actors. We do need to influence them, and we should not just leave them alone, on their own. And we should engage powerful international actors too. I wanna, since Vicken mentioned my own case, I wanna give you again this as example. When I started Meydan TV, the government was totally against it. It's still against it. The government doesn't like Meydan TV. I left Meydan TV 2 years ago. I have nothing now to do with Meydan TV, but when I'm thinking that just me and several other colleagues, we created from scratch media, independent media that still exists, after it's found the left, which is very rare in Azerbaijan. In Azerbaijan, when a person who found something leaves, then everything collapses, not always, but mostly. So that was a good example. And this is why, because we had a vision from the very beginning to create an institution, so it will exist without me or other people who were there. And at the very beginning, it was very hard. Yes, we had to pay the price, but eventually we found international allies. We found allies in Azerbaijan. So what Meydan TV did is now about, 10 to 20% of entire Azerbaijan watching it, and it's not just watching, it has impact on policies in Azerbaijan, but most importantly, we always show a lot of social economic issues. And so the government officials and fellow citizens go and help those people whose problems we're showing, right? My friends now told me that if we show 100 reportages about problems of people, individual social economic problems or community problems, out of 100 reportages, 100 cases are being solved. So government is watching this and they are trying to solve the problem. Unfortunately, they're not solving it, they maybe systematically on a policy level, but it still changed lives of people every day. So, and this happens again, because right now the government kind of accepted the realities that Meydan TV exists, and to my knowledge, they have not been jailing or touching anyone from Meydan TV, at least since I left it, So my point is here that sometimes even people who have nothing to do with state, from civil society, individuals, by coming together, finding powerful allies, I'm not saying we can change completely the situation, you know, but we can influence things, we can push things. And in case of our conflict, the Armenia Azerbaijan conflict, I think that dynamics of this conflict changed. Vicken pointed out the negative parts of it, but there are also positive parts. The positive part is that what is happening now, what we didn't see in last 30 years, about 30 years, is that there are governments are talking about opening, you know, communication, transport links. There was no talk of this, or it was not a reality for last 30 years. And today, the Turkey that was against it, or, you know, Russia that was, you know, I don't know, against it, but was not helping it at least, they are part of it and they are pushing for it. So there are forces now, even beyond Armenian Azerbaijan, that are pushing in this specific case for something very good. And this is new dynamics. So when you consider the fact that there is this new dynamic now in this conflict, I think that it's even more important, and there are even more chances that the things that I was talking about, the structured dialogue, the policy recommendations, developing maybe white papers, you know, to international development agencies, where you basically can connect economic connectivity with development aid and technical assistance, it can, and blend it in, so it can actually push things in the right direction. And I agree with you, it could be, it may not work, you know, there is no guarantee that this will work. But if there was a time to do it, then the time is now. If there is a time to try it, then the time is now. Many of my Azerbaijani friends, they say, Emin, this is what you're saying is unrealistic. I had some German or European politicians telling me, Emin, what are you talking about? We are getting every day tens, hundreds of hate emails from Armenian and Azerbaijani. They are saying they are destroying our cultural heritage. They're saying they're, you know, destroying our cultural heritage. They are killing us. They are hating us. So they are getting all these emails, okay, all this communication, and then several people are coming and talking about all these dreams and all these, you know, good things, and they are also confused. They say, well, but why do you think it's possible? And I'm saying, look, you cannot expect that after 30 years of hate and war and, you know, mutual destruction, this society's, this hate cannot just evaporate, you know, it cannot just fade away. I mean, it is naive to expect it. But I think there can be some forward-looking people, both from Azerbaijan and Armenian community, both from Armenian and Azerbaijan governments, both from academia, from, you know, Armenian and Azerbaijani sides, civil society, business people. They are very few. I mean, just to make myself clear, I don't think that the masses or all business people or all academics, you know, Armenians, Azerbaijans will support this. But I know a few people who will, and I'm sure there are also a few people on Armenian side who would love, you know, at least to explore those ideas. And I think that that should be our target, you know, really to create a small circle of people, you know, put them on a small boat and, you know, let them just, you know, float around the world and discuss these ideas and turn them, and really, again, not to attack each other, but really to try honestly to understand what would realistically work for both sides, you know, at least what is worth trying. Because I think that we can come up and say many things now, but if this will not adopt it in Armenia or in Azerbaijan, so, you know, we need to also to discuss a strategy. Maybe certain things will be adopted in Azerbaijan and Armenian society, but you cannot do it at once. You cannot just go public and, you know, just start throwing this at these people who are licking their wounds, you know, after this war, you know, which just happened. So, so in my view, all these, again, I don't see basically a point where I would disagree with Vicken with what he was saying. I'm all for it. What I'm saying is we should do both. We cannot just do one of it. And I personally, of course, believe that this engaging governments, international players, and trying to convince them to invest in this, it will create the right vibes, the right context, environment. And I'm not just saying, and I agree with this also, first of all, it will be us who will help us, you know. It will be only Armenian Azerbaijan that can, first of all, you know, help ourselves and each other. And we need to understand this. And I want to say here another thought, because I know that there is now euphoria in Azerbaijan and there is deep sadness in Armenia. But, you know, I want us also to look beyond that. You know, in 90s, the geopolitical weather was on the side of Armenia. You know, they thought they solved the conflict. Now the geopolitical weather was on the side of Azerbaijan. A lot of people in Azerbaijan think they solved the conflict. But I don't believe in that. I think that if we don't use this moment to start, you know, solving this conflict together in a meaningful way, what will happen is another 10, 20 years, and then, you know, another war can start, you know, and I don't want this. And I think that nobody who loves Armenian Azerbaijan should not want this. So we have now this, you know, some time really to think and to debate and to discuss and to prepare something that could work. At least we should try this.
I want to pick up the idea that Emin mentioned, that borders and communications are being opened up. This is being done not because Baku and Yerevan decided. This is being done because Moscow decided, which in itself is not good, it's not bad, that's the reality. Now, my concern is that when you open borders and when you have communities that for 30 years they just heard one-sided nationalist propaganda about how bad the neighbor is, I have difficulties imagining how these people are going to have daily life, you know, with this kind of neighbors next to them. If we intellectuals, we don't offer them an alternative narrative away from this polarizing and antagonistic nationalism, then we will put these villagers, because they are mainly villagers in Karabakh or border areas, in an impossible situation. So it's our responsibility, instead of fighting over culture, fighting over the past, imagine how to look forward, imagine how to develop a narrative so that this normalization process happens and doesn't end up into a nightmare, because both are possible. This opening up, either it will bring, as Emin said, exchanges, trade, investment, and prosperity, which I doubt, because, you know, the oil is in the Caspian, it's not in Karabakh. So neither foreigners nor local investors will run to invest in Karabakh. Basically, Karabakh is a mountainous region, and it's a burden on any state budget. So let's not overestimate the economic potential of Karabakh. There might be some tourism, there might be some mining, there's water. Water is important. But outside that, it's mountainous regions. Mountainous regions don't bring money to state budgets. They take money away from state budgets. Anyway, don't tell this to nationalists. They don't know about it. But what is important is that those villagers, those simple people who don't have the possibilities of taking political decisions, economic decisions, intellectual decisions, we offer them the best we can, so that they have normal lives, so that they don't feel insecure, so that they don't think about their neighbor as the beast who might come and attack me and kill me. And here again, I come back to our responsibility, because we didn't do our responsibility as a social group, as intelligentsia, and we should assume this, be able to look forward and be able to offer solutions to those people who can't do that for themselves.
Real quick, wait, I mean, sorry, you're muted just because we had an echo. I do want to pose a question. Of course, feel free, Emin, to respond to anything you'd like to, but I do want to pose a question that I'd like to hear from both of you. After that, we're going to do final thoughts, because we're already closing in on an hour. The conversation will not be over. We're going to move to the after party on Discord. But I just want to know what measures you think each government can do today to bring us closer to whatever process we're looking to achieve.
Okay, so I will combine my comment to Vicken with answering your question. So Vicken said that, you know, Karabakh has only mountains, so there is no oil, there will be no investments, and, well, yes, there is no oil, true, and nobody will rush there just on their own to come and invest there. But I think that this is exactly the challenge. This is exactly what governments could do. I mean, in my view, if, let me talk about government of Azerbaijan. I'm afraid that the government in Azerbaijan and people in Azerbaijan are in euphoria. You know, like, oh, we solved the conflict. We did it as we wanted. So now, you know, it's over. I don't think it's over. I don't think that, and I think that Azerbaijan has now a chance to make steps, you know, graceful steps towards Armenia. And I'm not going now to say which steps. I think this is there should be a very serious consideration, discussions about what these steps could be, you know. But one of the things that Azerbaijan should do internally, I mean, Azerbaijan needs to do very serious economic reforms, liberalization of economy that will hope eventually lead to the liberalization of political system. I think that we can exactly use Karabakh as a place where there will be, you know, you don't need, if you create special conditions, if you create certain incentives, you know, in Karabakh, let's say both, I don't know, in Khankandi and Shushi or Shusha, where you would where you would attract talent, tech talent, for example, where you would create, try to create, you know, financial hub, tech hub for the region, to find the niche, you know, in global supply chain where exactly this region could start being developed into something special, into, you know, machine where you will produce opportunities, you know, where you will have financial capital and so on. You know, saying that these are mountains, it's not possible. I mean, I can name you countries where there was nothing, you know, and out of nothing they created, you know, financial heavens, or not just financial heaven. It is possible. Of course, it's difficult. I agree with you. I mean, I don't want to sound like a complete naive dreamer, but I think that if we're talking about what, and this could be another area of cooperation, I think, again, I want to repeat, if we would, instead of fighting each other, just imagine Armenia, Azerbaijan, that were fighting each other at least for the last 30 years, imagine that energy, that resources, that human brain that went into fighting each other. And now you ask yourself, for what? And also not just fighting each other and wasting it, but also blocking, you know. I think much more brain power and opportunities and benefits that we all could have together, we have killed for each other, you know, and for all of us. So if we can find a way to unblock it, and again, using Azerbaijani oil, using, you know, Armenian diaspora, using talents, you know, when I see that so many Azerbaijans, when they go, you know, abroad, they achieve so much, or look at Armenians, you know, they achieve so much more in the world rather than in Armenia itself. If we could combine all of this, you know, and try to turn from hate mood to love mood, to cooperation mood, to, you know, collaboration mood, and I'm sure we will be able to find a way how to turn Karabakh in a very special place where at the end of the day, and I want to say something else here, you know, I really feel ashamed that for both Azerbaijans and Armenians, that in 21st century, we're still fighting for the piece of land. It's very small piece of land. I think that we need to find a way to develop infrastructures there where at the end of the day, you know, you will not need a passport to live, you know, in Khankandi or Shusha or Baku or Yerevan. So, you know, I think that we need to think about this. We need to dream about this. We need, not at once, it's not going to happen at once, but we need to start developing small projects, opening communication, borders, do reconciliation. So maybe that sounds crazy now, and I don't want again to sound that I'm not saying let's open borders immediately so people go and then some incidents happen and then it actually helps nationalism and fascism to flourish in both countries. No, I think there are ways to do it carefully, to do it in selected way. It should be national. I was actually very, very much glad that there was a meeting of basically heads of national security agencies. I think it was even on territory of Armenia, if I'm not mistaken, and it was without Russian mediators, by the way, which I noticed it was in January, I think, this meeting. So such meetings should happen, and these, again, governments, because we cannot do this, okay? We cannot, we can protect, people can protect, but at the initial stage, it should be if both governments give signals that this is okay, and they will not do it at once, but they will do event, okay, in one village, another village, which will be protected, if needed by security forces or by, so it should be gradual process. And I think that when people see that the governments are okay with this, and then when they will see that there are projects and ideas that again can benefit both communities, this hate, this mutual destruction mood, I think it will fade away very fast. I also want to add something here about Russia's role or role of outsiders. It is a strange, it's strange, like when Azerbaijan and Armenia became independent in 1918. So for 2 years, Azerbaijan and Armenia were fighting. And only when Russians came, fighting stopped. And I'm not in support of Russians, coming and occupying Armenia and Azerbaijan. But what I'm saying is that, as Vicken said, I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's a reality that Russia, Turkey played a role, and we have to look at this reality and use it for the benefit of the people. So my question I'm asking myself is, how can I and let's say my or our allies use this situation, okay, to move forward? Because we cannot change the reality, but we can take this reality and use it, to our advantage. And I think that, yeah, that the regional powers or international powers, again, we can say that nobody will come rush. When I look at leading American Democrats representing certain positions, which are, in my view, this, for example, doesn't help create peace and security between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But they represent these positions because their Armenian constituency wants them to represent certain positions. Okay. Now imagine we change that. Armenian constituency says, okay, we want you to commit, part of, American budget or development budget to certain ideas that, let's say, this circle of Azerbaijan and Armenian scholars are proposing, and these are good ideas. This will help peace and security. Again, maybe this is totally unrealistic, and that's exactly not the mood there in that community. But we need to have to start moving there, and we need to, and I know this frustration and people are tired, and many people in both communities think that these ideas are not realistic. But I think, again, if there is a time to try, again, then it is now, and we have to try, and we have to build this dialogue again very carefully with the very selected groups or numbers of individuals who can, represent, in my view, governments, civil societies, businesses, creative part of our societies. Because I believe that even if you talk about governments, I don't think that everyone in Azerbaijan government is the same. I don't think everyone in Armenian government is the same. Again, even when we talk about selecting people with whom we talk in governments, we should be also selective about it. And the same with scholars, the same with, public figures and so on. But in my view, there is just no other way. We have to try this.
Thank you, Emin. So Vicken, feel free to respond. I would also like to hear from you what measure you think governments can take, and then we're going to wrap it up with final thoughts.
I think governments should stop hate speech. This is their responsibility. And governments also should stop taking steps which the other community feels threatened by it. Just one example, I read in the news that in Şuşi/Şuşa, there will be a school built by the nationalist Turkish party, MHP, which for Armenians will be a sign of threat. So the party that sponsors the Grey Wolves coming and establishing a school in the middle of Karabakh, it's a bad message to Armenians. It's also a bad message to Russians and to Iranians. So I don't understand these kind of steps, and I call governments, both governments, authorities in Baku and Yerevan, to stop this kind of provocative steps. But I don't want just to stop with governments. I think it's also up to the public opinion to take up its responsibilities, and especially intellectuals, because governments had 26 years where they monopolized the negotiations on Karabakh. They did not inform their public what they were negotiating, and eventually they couldn't deliver. So let's not wait governments again for years to deliver. It's also up to our responsibility. It's up to the citizens of these two countries. It's up to the intellectuals who form the public opinion to come up with solutions.
Thank you, Vicken. We are going to wrap it up. You'll both have an opportunity for final thoughts. In your final thoughts, I'd also like to hear, we spoke about a good faith measure from government. There's a lot of people watching this now. There's going to be, at the very minimum, tens of thousands more that will watch this after the fact. I want to hear from both of you what the people can do, what everyday individuals can do, those watching, how they can contribute to this peace process. I'm dropping a Discord link in the chat. So the conversation is not ending. We're going to end the live, and then we're going to move to Discord. Discord is an opportunity for the community members to join in and speak directly with their guests. And even after the fact, we have a channel there dedicated to Armenia Azerbaijan, where we hope Armenians and Azerbaijanis are going to engage in the reconciliation process on a day-to-day basis. That's what the Discord is for. And if you're new to this page, subscribe. Unless you didn't like what you saw, then don't. It's all good. Great. Final thoughts. Emin.
Well, as I said, I hope that we will find a group of people in Armenia and Azerbaijan who will try to build this structured dialogue between two communities. I'm thinking about scholars, I'm thinking about policy professionals, I'm thinking about business community. I think that it is very important to carefully and honestly to talk each other and try to understand each other and to hear each other, to understand and to feel each other's pain, and honestly ask, what could we do for each other? How could we do it? With what steps, with what phases, because I don't believe that this is such a, it is complicated and we cannot solve all issues at once. We need to have a strategy, we need to brainstorm, but we do not have to do it as people who want, mutually destroy each other, or, we need to do it as two communities who will live next to each other, forever. So there is no alternative. And the sooner we understand it, the sooner we start this dialogue. And it may take years, I don't know. It may fail again, and then we'll have to start again. But I think that if we can start this process in good faith, then the results will come. And as I said, I believe there is a unique and there is very important dynamics change now, and things that have not worked before may at the end work now. And this is my message to all those who feel frustrated, who feel that no, it's not going to work. These two nations just hate each other, and it will stay like this for, I don't know, for several centuries. I don't believe in this. I think that we should. I agree with Vicken that we should rather try to do it ourselves, rather than just regional or other powers coming and imposing it, because it will happen. Like it happened in history before. So I think if anyone thinks about national identity and pride, then they should think about doing it on our own rather than allowing others to do it for us. And I'm not against using others to achieve our common interests, but I would again rather do it on our own with involvement, allies and friends who can help us to do that.
Thank you, Emin.
So just to wrap up, there's one precondition for dialogue: that people listen to each other, people respect each other. It's as simple as that. My personal experience was that there's no problem for Armenians and Azerbaijanis to talk to each other. They have common heritage coming from the Soviet Union. They saw similar movies. They went to similar schools. Now, because of this conflict, for the first time in history, Armenians and Azerbaijanis are separated. They still live next to each other, but not in Armenia and Azerbaijan anymore, not in Karabakh. They live next to each other in Georgia, in Russia, but not the way it was in the 19th century. Baku, Ganja, Shusha, Yerevan, these were mixed cities. This mixity, this sense of cosmopolitanism is being lost today. The young generation does not know about it. And the young generation is full with these images of antagonism, of animosity, of hatred, which is full. But this can be solved on one precondition: that people are ready to listen to each other and then come up with what they have to say. And once they do that, once they are ready to engage in a dialogue, I'm sure they can find the solutions themselves. They will not need external experts, external investments, because these people lived next to each other for centuries. So I hope this will happen at last. And I thank you for organizing this debate.
Thank you so much, Vicken. Thank you, Emin. This was great. I'd love to have you both back on in the future. As we all know, these conversations are important, so we should continue to do them. The conversation will now continue in the Discord. Once you join Discord, you will see on the left-hand side, it says Lounge. Click on Lounge and you will be connected. If you don't want to speak but want to type, you'll see it says Lounge Text right above Lounge. That's where you type. And shout out to the chat today, which was by and large respectful. These conversations can become difficult, but the chat did a great job. So thank you, chat, and see you all in Discord. Oh yeah, and this Thursday we have another debate between an Israeli and a Palestinian, Zahir and Gershon Baskin. So if you're interested, tune into that. Much love, friends.